Hello, everyone. So, welcome to the live analysis of SAT 2023. So, I took the exam in the slot, and English was slightly on a different side. There were some few quant questions which were, students could not, were not able to understand. There was, some few couple of difficult questions in quant, considering the, the history of SAT paper. Let's look in detail about the paper. So the paper pattern was as usual. As expected, there were 16 questions in general English, 16 questions in quantitative and general awareness, and 12 questions in analytical and logical reasoning. The marking scheme and again the marking scheme and the duration were the same, right? The interface was very friendly. No, there was no change in the interface as compared to the last year. It had a proper four different section for student to distinguish. No sectional time limit was there, and there was no on-screen calculator. So not any major changes when it comes to the UI, the user interface for the SAT examination. Now, if I look at the general English section, so it had one question on poem where here they had given four lines and you have to identify now in which of the following lines the word were arranged in a proper order. So, which means out of the four lines and the three lines, they were in the poetic order. In one of the line, it was not in a poetic order. So you need to identify which was that line. Okay. Then there were two questions on proverbs, one on pro and one on idioms. So not very difficult. Proverbs and idiom question. Proverb and idioms were the one that student would have heard before, and the idiom that was asked was, I mean, we use that in our day-to-day life as well, so it was not very difficult idiom. Okay, so could have been managed by an average or above average prepared student. There were two questions on figure of speech. So in one question, you had to identify, the simile. Okay, and I mean, there were four sentences given. You need to identify which figure of speech had a simile. And in the second question, it had out of the four statement, which option had a simile as well as a metaphor. Okay, so again, we have very easy, straightforward questions. Like the sentence was also very short and could have been easily attempted by the students, not without any hiccups here. There were seven grammar questions. Now, if we talk about the grammar questions, two grammar questions were based on poem. So not exactly poem. They had given, two sentences, two lines from the poem, and they had asked to identify which of the following is the preposition used in the poem. Okay, so not a very straightforward, because a poetic language, it changed slightly, right? So not very straightforward. So I felt one of the question was a bit tricky. None of the normal preposition were given as a preposition in the actual option. Okay. Then there was one question which was based on countable and uncountable nouns. So there were four sentences given. You need to identify which of the following sentence has used the countable and uncountable noun correctly. Then there was one question based on future continuous tense, very straightforward question. There was one nursery rhyme given to us, Baba Black Sheep, and then in that one sentence was given, and you need to identify in this sentence which of the following was acting as a conjunction. Again, not a sentence; it was a poetic rhyme, right? So poetic line. So not very straightforward, not very easy there as well. Then there was one question based on sentence was given, and you need to identify which of the following word were either they were adjective or adverb. Okay, and yeah, so this were the seven questions that were tested in grammar. I would say slightly different, or slightly it had slight variation as compared to the previous 2-3 years SCT question that have been tested. Then there were four questions on vocabulary. Vocabulary questions were straightforward. One question was they asked you to find out which of the following was a compound word. Okay, so sorry, which of the following was not a compound word? The other three were compound, so it was very straightforward. One was antonyms. Then there was one question based on fill in the blank where they had asked, I mean, there were two blanks, and in both the blanks, the word that was used was a homonyms. So, student need to understand, student need to know what is the exact meaning of both the words, right? So, and there was one question where, spelling mistakes, the word which was not correctly spelled. Okay, again, that was straightforward question. So overall, English section was, I would say, easy to moderate, but because there were three questions which had poetic language and two figure of speech. I have kept this section as a moderate and not an easy to moderate, because there was slight variation, and some of the students would have felt little bit of shock when it came to those 5, 4, 5, 6 questions that were slightly different. However, those questions were not very difficult. So if student would have kept patience, probably student would have been able to easily attempt 12, 13 questions. So anything which is more than 13 questions, 13 genuine questions attempt, since there is no negative marking, so I'm sure everyone will attempt everything. So here the good attempt we are talking about, a genuine good attempt. Okay. So anything which is more than 13 or 13, more than 13 was considered to be a genuine good attempt. A well prepared student, I'm sure, should be able to attempt this many question in English, should not face a difficulty. Okay, ideally, the entire English section could have been finished in 12 odd minutes or something, right? uh, Now let's move on to the analysis of a quantitative section. So quantitative section had questions from almost all the areas. As usual, arithmetic had the major chunk, 6 questions on arithmetic. So there was one question on time speed distance here, where the ratios of speed were given, and you were supposed to find out what are the ratios of the ratio of the time taken, and the distance was constant that was given to, right? Then there was one question on mixture. Okay, so that mixture question was particularly very difficult question and lengthy question. That question ideally should not have been attempted. So that question had, there were two alloys of aluminum and some weight were given, and then both of them were cut, and then the first of one part, first part of the first alloy is mixed with the second, and then equal, the percentage turned out to be equal. So it was really complicated. That was a speed breaker in this section that should not have been attempted ideally. Okay. Then there was one question on time and work, which was straightforward. That was very easy. You just have to write one equation. So it was not the time and work where you have to take the LCM, but the question was based on, men and women, were given to us, and, they complete in so many days, and then you equate, and they simply ask you to find the ratio of the efficiencies of man and woman. So again, that was doable. That was straightforward and easy. Then there was one question based on markup percentage, where they had given profit percentage, discount percentage, and they asked what is the markup percentage, right? Then there was one question on ratio and another on averages. Both were straightforward, simple. The average question was, maybe student would have taken slightly more time because of the way it was designed. Okay, otherwise the questions were easy. So out of 6 arithmetic questions, 5 questions were easy, were manageable, were doable. One question ideally should have been, I would not say left, but then you could have simply guessed worked, and you would have went ahead. Then there were 4 questions on modern maths. So modern maths question, there were one question on permutation combination, which had, there were some boys and girls. If only girls play the game between themselves, then there are so many games played, and only boys play, then there are so many, games are played. So how many games would be played if there is one girl and one boy? So like, concept of handshake, you can say, similar to that, right? Exact similar concept of handshake. So that was one question on permutation combination. Then there was one question on probability. So that was slightly lengthy, I would say. Also, the options were, 0.9987, though, after decimal, there were four digits. Okay. So that was slightly, it was not difficult. Okay. But then it was slightly lengthy and could have been, avoided. You could have simply, guessed worked, and, you could have randomly marked it, and you could have, worked on it. Then there was one question on logarithm, a very, very easy question. Logarithm is one topic where, which is not generally tested in SAT, okay? But this question, was very easy, and I could, hear students talking among themselves that, yeah, this logarithm question is something that, that never comes, why did they ask logarithm question? But if someone would have, have that patience, could have read that question, it was, that question was on the first definition of logarithm. Simply, you just have to take the base on the left hand side, and you get your answer, as easy as that. Okay. And the numbers were also very, integer numbers were there, and, it was very much manageable. It was very easy. Then there was one again easy question on arithmetic progression. Where the difference was 5 and the first term was given, the last term was given. You need to find summation of all the terms. So again, manageable sum basically. So out of this four modern math question, probably one question could have been you could have skipped. I mean, you could have just guessed worked it. That was a probability question. There were two questions on geometry. One was coordinate geometry question. Now that question was a straightforward question. Two coordinates were given, in which one of them was x and the slope was given, and they asked you what is x. So that was again straightforward question. The another geometry question, I felt that that question was straightforward. The right angle triangle was given, the length of the perpendicular sides were given, and you were supposed to find out what will be the length of the perpendicular drawn from the 90-degree vertex to the hypotenuse. Okay. So basically the other altitude that you were supposed to find out, altitude to the hypotenuse. So that was straightforward question. But then, again, geometry is something which is not been, tested in symbiosis very often, and students generally tend to skip this. So students found it slightly, difficult. They were not able to understand probably how to approach. But ideally, it was an easy question. A student who know the basic formula for area of triangle, I'm sure that student would have easily attempted or cracked this particular question. Then there were two questions on algebra. Now, here there's two questions on algebra. Both question was based on linear arrangement. Okay, so one question was based on it was based on the fare of an adult and the fare of a child. Basically, the fixed cost is same and fixed cost is same, right? Fixed cost and variable cost. So variable cost of a child is half that of adult, and so on and so forth. Some the price of one ticket was given and price of one adult and one child ticket was given, and you were supposed to find out what is the fixed cost and what's the variable cost. So still you need to form an equation and get it done. So that was manageable, I would say. Okay, not very difficult. That should have been attempted. And there was one more linear equation question where some orange number of boys, total number of boys and girls were given, and number of oranges were given. One girl get this many oranges, one boy gets this many oranges. So find a number of girls, in the group. So I mean, could have been attempted by linear equation, but if a student is smart, probably could have used alligation and could have also solved this question. So by using the means of alligation, it could have become very easy. Where it could have simplified your the calculation step that you would normally take while solving the linear equation. There was one question on numbers that was based on LCM. So it was a concept of circular races, but question on circular races, but I would say 90% application was of LCM. So that we fall under numbers. The numbers were not very great. The times of three runners were given, how much time they take, and the numbers were 3-digit numbers, something in 500, 600. Okay, but a smart, prepared student would have straight away marked the one of the option, because the numbers that were given, okay, that has to be the answer. Final answer has to be multiple of 9, and there was only one option multiple of 9. So student could have straight away gone and marked that option without actually finding the LCM. And the LCM was coming out to be a 4-digit. So maybe if student would have understood the question, either student would have skipped it because it's too lengthy, or student would have wasted at least 2 minutes in finding the LCM of a 3-digit number, which was eventually coming out to be 4-digit. But you could have attempted this question in less than a minute if you figure out that because it's an LCM should be multiple of 9. So you could have just went ahead and marked that particular option. Then there was one question on data interpretation. The tabular graph, tabular data which was given, that was quite big. But then there was only one question, and it was based on only 1 year and one subject. So it was very easy, straightforward. Could have been attempted. Okay. I would say this section was easy to moderate. Maybe student who is not very much prepared would found difficult, moderate to difficult, but otherwise a well prepared student would have taken this section as easy to moderate. Most of the students were able to attempt 11, 12 question. There were students who could not figure out what to do in 2, 3 questions that we discussed. Otherwise, anything which is 11, 12, 11 plus 12, 13 would have been considered to be a genuine good attempt for this section, and probably you would have spent 25 minutes here, right? Now coming to general awareness. Now general awareness here, had 11 static GK question and 5 current affair question. There were 4 easy questions which I found. I could 4 to 5 easy question. One question was, where is Waka Stadium? situated. Then there was one question on Alaska, then there was one question on Jeff Bezos. The other question was, which award that the Natu Natu song, won, and right. Then there was some question on Gir National Park, and some, question on who. So some one paragraph was given. You need to identify the personality. Who is he? Then some one question on Azad Hind Force, and the longest cruise, the longest bridge, which is some 10,000 feet high. Where is it located? And uh, some current affair question was based on the living index. Living index, and so there are two statements. So the two question in GK where multiple statements were given, and you need to identify which of the following statements were correct. So in a question, I would say there were multiple questions in one question, because if there are three statements given, you need to identify which of the following statement is correct. You need to guess all the three statements correct, whether they are right or wrong, right? Then there was question on G20 summit, and hyperloop. What is hyperloop? So the four options were given. So this was GK, and what we realized is, and that's what our student also said, that if a student had taken attempted all the mocks that provided by IMS and the GK compendium that we have provided, a student found that 8 to 9 questions were there from either the mocks or from the GK compendium. So for the IMS student, the section was I would say, I mean, anything in GK more than 50%, if you already know the answer, it's a cakewalk. It's a cakewalk section, right? However, the section will keep this as moderate to difficult, looking in the entire community of the students, right? So there were a lot of static GK questions which students, student probably would not know about it, right? So we keep this section as moderate to difficult. Anything more than 9 in the section would be a genuinely good attempt here out of 16. Probably could have, you could have run through the 16 questions in 8 odd minutes. Yeah. And now then let's move on to the analytical and the logical reasoning section. So this section was slightly lengthy, I would say. There were 5 verbal reasoning questions. Now, verbal reasoning question, one question was based on assumption, one question was based on cause effect, one on courses of action. Then there was one question based on if then, if this, if X, then Y, then, the conclusion does not follow. Okay. And then one of the verbal reasoning question was, there was a passage, 2-3 line passage given, and then which of the following best supported by the passage. The 5 questions based on verbal reasoning there. 2 questions on coding decoding. One question was the alphabets were they had numbered, like so alternate number. A was some 97, B was 99, and so on and so forth. Then they asked you to find out what is the code for some 4 alphabets. Okay, so that was very easy, straightforward. The another decoding question was difficult. It was not very straightforward. So that was 2 words were given. So there were 3 codes were given for in every code there were 2 words, and for that 2 words there was some big not an English dictionary word was given to you, and then you need to identify what is the code for the 4th word. So again, the logic for that question was not very straightforward, easy. Probably student would not have should not have spent more time on that question. Maybe a 30-second or a minute, and you realize that you are not heading forward, you could have skipped that question. There are 2 questions on clocks and calendar, one each actually. I would say both the question was slightly different. Okay, the clock question was very interestingly designed. It was very easy. But then there were 3 clocks. One circular, one rectangular, and one square. And from the first clock, you need to find out. So basically, for every clock, some direction was given. Like for the circular clock, if they move for 5 minutes, hour and move for 1 hour, then in the square clock, if the minute hand moves for 1 minute, and then in the third clock for the second hand, some data was given, and then you need to find out summation of the angles by all the hands. But I mean, that question was easy. If a lot of students got fumbled and got confused with respect to, because there were 3 different types of clock. Now it does not matter, whether circular clock, it's a square clock, the angles would remain the same, right? Because the hands would move in a circle. Okay, so it was straightforward, easy question. Now, calendar question was, was different. I came across, such question for the first time in my, teaching experience of close to 15 years. So, they had mixed the concept of remainder and the calendar, like, in the first quarter of our 21st century, you add all the dates in the leap year and you divide by number of weeks. Okay. And the option that were given was also very interesting. The answer that comes out to be will be number of weekdays, or it will be, so number of days, or, number of months. And, there was one more lengthy option. So you need to evaluate, you need to find out the exact value, numerical value of every option, and then you can mark it. Right. So it was slightly lengthy, but then a doable one, I would say. I'm sure, not many students would have attempted it because the way it was designed was slightly different. There was one question on series, not a number series, or alphabet series, very straightforward. I'm sure, a lot of students, most of the students would have cracked it in less than 30 seconds time. So it was very straightforward series given. There was one blood relation question. I found that question to be an ambiguous question because the gender was not known. Okay. And one of the option was none of the option. I mean, none of the above option. So, you have to eliminate the two option and mark the third option, because gender was not given, it could be either uncle or aunt, it could be brother or brother-in-law, sister-in-law. But then there was one combination with uncle, aunt, or brother-in-law, sister-in-law. So, you go ahead and mark that option because there was no option called cannot be determined. So, maybe, could have been designed properly according to me. Okay. There was one question on linear arrangement. Now, this was slightly lengthy because it has only one question and there were 10 people. And it was that too also north-south facing. Again, in this question, I found it little ambiguous because it was not mentioned that one person is sitting immediate left. They said, it was written that, A is to the left of B. Now, it did not mention whether it's immediate left. And then the question based on who is sitting opposite to whom. Now, because you don't know where A is sitting immediate left of B or next one place to the left of B, the answer could, vary actually, right? But then, so basically there was an assumption involved here that you take it to immediate left and you mark it, you get an answer. Then you get an actual answer. Otherwise, all the four options were actually possible. Okay. So this section was easy to moderate, not very difficult, probably one coding decoding question. Yeah, I could say, one coding decoding and maybe one that clock calendar out of those two or out of these three questions, probably apart from this three question, I'm sure the other question should have been easily, students should have attempted it and students should have got it correct. And maybe some of the students, would also attempt either of those three question clock calendar. If you would have read it, you would have attempted it. Okay. I mean, you need patience to understand what they are asking. So, 9 questions were easily doable, and hence the genuine good attempt should be anything which is 9 plus to get that overall good marks. And the ideal time to spend here is 15 minutes, 12 question, 15 minutes. Few questions like verbal reasoning question and the series question and blood relation question were, could have been attempted in less than a minute time, right? So if you look at the, the total time, that we have discussed that, 15 here, 25, 40 and 12, 52, and then 8 minutes, 60 minutes for the GK section. So the entire, 60 minutes, probably, depending upon your strength and weakness, you could have done plus or minus here and there. But I believe, this should have been the ideal time with plus or minus 1 or 2 minutes here and there for every section. And if you would have done this, you would have, easily sailed through the paper. Now, looking at the overall analysis, the level of difficulty of the paper was easy to moderate, slightly, I would say, slightly one notch difficult than the last year's SET. Okay, and hence I am expecting the cutoff to slightly go down, not too much. Maybe 42 plus would be considered to be a good score here with an attempt of 45 plus. I mean, 45 plus genuine attempt we are talking about. I mean, we still have those 15 questions where, out of those 15 questions, if you would have bluffed, you would have got 3, 4 correct there. And out of genuine attempt, you would have got, let's say, 2, 3 wrong. Anything in the range of 42 plus, like, 44, 45, would be a good score. And if a student who is scoring, 46, 47 in this paper, probably would have a higher end when it comes to, cracking the final call. But as we know that, it is not the percentile for one paper and the second paper, which is on 14th of like this month, next week. So you have to perform, good in that mock also. I mean, if let's say if that mock is, that 14th May paper is slightly difficult, then probably the student attempting in this exam would score high, and the vice versa if the 14th May paper is slightly easy. And if you perform better, let's say you scored 40, 42 here, and in that paper you scored 48. The 48 mark will be considered and not 42, right? I'm sure everyone knows this, right? So but what we believe is, and it was written in the instruction very clearly, that they would try to replicate the 14th May paper as well. Okay. So now, because most of you know what was the paper pattern of 6th May SET paper, you can prepare on those lines, strategize it. It was clearly written that they will try to replicate it with the same concept, but the different question. So you know, probably if it happens, then you know which question to be attempted and which question should not be attempted. Okay. Now coming to the next stage. So when the result is declared, you will have some 1 week to 10 days time, not even 10 days, I would say approximately 1 week's time, to prepare for the GDPI VAT. The final shortlist will be based on the SET score and the PI VAT process. So 50% is given to SET score and 50% to PI VAT process. I would suggest that a student who is really aiming at Symbiosis Symbiosis campus should start preparing for the PI VAT process. We have lot of sources available on our portal for the PI and VAT. So start referring to them. After your 14th May exam get over, start referring to them and start preparing for a basic PI VAT questions. Okay. So that's it from my end. Thank you so much and all the best for this attempt as well as the 14th May attempt. Thank you, everyone. Start referring to them, start preparing for a basic question. Okay. So that's it from my end. Thank you so much and all the best for this attempt as well as the 14th May attempt. Thank you. Oh, love of